policy making for for the design of regional forest monitoring initiatives. So I believe that a regional approach to forest monitoring, a regional approach to designing policies is important, and here's why. The truth is that most of the drivers of forest cover change do not act across, they act across borders. You have factors and drivers like illegal trades in forest products such as timber, charcoal. You have factors such as climate change which are acting on a global scale, not on a local scale. So you need that aspect of regional monitoring. Then there's also the fact that some of those regional resources that we have, forest resources, are transboundary. You have the example of the Miombo forests that are shared between Tanzania and Mozambique. You have the coastal forest and mangrove forest, which go all the way from the coastline of southeastern Somalia down to Mozambique. So there is that need. So evidently there's that need to provide better sharing, better data. There's that need to not only provide data, but that data needs to come in a systematic manner. It needs to be regular. And this is what the Eastern Africa Forest Observatory aims to do. The Observatory is a platform where forest institutions in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Mozambique can share their data on the forest cover trends, on the drivers of change, as well as other data in terms of carbon emissions. And this data that they share there can be used. They can use this data to monitor the implementation with REDD+ implementation and progress with achieving the targets under AFRI 100. So during the development of this observatory, we figured out that for it to be successful in the long term and be sustainable in the long term, there's that need, the willingness and the ability of the institutions in the forest sector to share data is key. So what we did was to try and examine what are those barriers to data sharing in the region. We tried to look at, now apart from now, these are the barriers, how can they be overcome? What are those opportunities that exist to overcome these barriers? So what we learned was really interesting. And in terms of the characteristics of the forest sector, data sharing in the forest sector in the region, we learned that data sharing is done on a needs basis. We learned that it's most of the institutions, very few institutions have written data sharing policies in place, although all of them have rules and regulations which are not written. We also learned that data, the forest sector data, is produced by multiple actors. And that's across, it's not only within the forest sector, it's across the forest sector, across ministries. So there's that need for the coordination of these actors. So in terms of the barriers, what are the barriers? I know that's the main thing. The barriers to forest data sharing in the forest sector. What we found 7 main barriers. And these are, for example, the fear of data abuse, where institutions feel that if they share data, it may be used wrongly to produce wrong results, and that it may not be cited back to them, and so on. Or maybe even the data that's shared, and this is data that maybe they consider to be sensitive or confidential, may be leaked outside there to the public or to people or other people that they did not intend it to be shared with. There's also that fear of becoming irrelevant because, like we mentioned before, there are multiple organizations and actors producing forest sector data. So there's that fear that if they share the data, they'll become irrelevant. And then there's also the whole aspect of the lack of data sharing because with REDD+, we have all these multi-stakeholder processes to data sharing. So there's that whole aspect of one institution having data. Yes, they have the data, but they cannot share it because it was produced in collaboration with other actors. We have the aspect of the lack of data sharing policies to guide the process. There's also the lengthy communication protocols, which in some cases depend on who is sharing, who is requesting for the data, what kind of data is it, the nature of the data, whether it's sensitive or confidential, and also there may be other things in place, like you have to pay a prescribed fee and the like. And there's lastly the fact that this data is scattered across many institutions, so there's that need for collaboration, for coordination of all these efforts, and that may be a challenge, especially when it's within different institutions in different ministries. So what is the solution? The other thing that I'd like to mention is that another problem, one of the things that we realize is the impact of this lack of data sharing is that there's that aspect of duplication of efforts because various people are working and producing the same kind of data, they're doing the same forest monitoring activities, and so there's that need to coordinate. And this has also led to the lack of meta-analysis of the data that's existing. And if we want this to inform decision-making processes, there's a need for that meta-analysis because the truth is that decision makers need, if you present them with data, raw data like that, they may need to know what does this data mean. So this is the amount of forest. What does it mean for poverty reduction? What does it mean for the communities? So what is the solution? I like what Wangari Maathai said. She said that there are opportunities even in the most difficult moments. So what the opportunities that we identified that could be leveraged upon to improve data sharing in the region were, number one, offering incentives. And it's simple as this. When you offer incentives, people will share data when they see the benefit in sharing data. There's also the need to have that data sharing policy and framework in place to ensure that all the actors feel comfortable. They know that this data, this is how this data is going to be, this is who is going to use it, and they know that their privacy to maybe data they may not be so comfortable sharing will be ensured. And there's also the whole aspect of creating awareness, capacity building, and creating awareness among the actors, teaching them this is why it's important, because there's that need to break that reluctance to sharing data. And the good thing is that a lot of institutions in the region are already recognizing the importance of this. And if I can give one example of Carefree in Kenya, that's the Kenya Forestry Research Institute, which has started an online knowledge management platform, and it's encouraging its scientists to share data. They're offering incentives to people who are sharing data, and then they're also offering regular capacity building activities where they train them, create awareness on why it's important to share data. And then also the need, this whole idea, this whole trend of cross-sectoral collaboration, like we've seen it in REDD+, in data, generation of data for the forest sector, that is a great thing. You know, of course it's starting and there's still a lot to be done, but that's another great opportunity. So in conclusion, I think what I can say, it's really, really important to remember that this data sharing is a shared responsibility. It needs us as researchers, practitioners, development partners to come together and work together to share data. And it's going to take time because changing mindsets takes time. So, but the benefits after all this change in mindset is going to be enormous. So thank you very much, and I'd like to invite you to check out the Observatory on apps.rthmrd.org to learn more about what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Laura, for that insightful talk. We will just move on to our second speaker, and he is specialized on forest management and forest landscape restoration, governance of natural resources, forest policy development and review, as well as climate change and carbon market. And his name is Mr. Julian Noel Rakotura Riswa. Okay. Okay, so he is going to talk to us about maintaining ecosystem services values. So going beyond restoration opportunities, assessments, methodology, and Madagascar. So please let's invite Mr. Julian. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So, I can tell you that it will be exciting almost for me because I have to share with you an interesting talk with my bad English. We are French speakers, but I will do my best to give something for you. Most countries have suffered forest loss of degradation since the last 2 decades. Opportunity for restoration exists on all continents and are huge in terms of area, although the estimate of their extent is rough. Madagascar is worldwide known for its species and natural habitat endemism, and its dramatically continuous deforestation, which has significant impacts on local community livelihoods. The drivers of deforestation in the country are coming especially from external factors like slash and burn agriculture, which drives us to rethink on concrete approaches. The solutions of forest problems are not only from forestry. They have to be more integrated through an intersectoral approach with a coherent territorial planning. Looking for restoration options are not enough and it drives most of the time into a sectoral approach. Even it might leverage the private sector own interest, which may be against multi-benefit shame and impact. The case of palm oil is one example of that. The need of maintaining ecosystem services gives us more coherent approach on how to find a balance on the landscape in which all sectors have their places. For our country, in addition to ROAM, I mean the Restoration Option Assessment methodology, we have run up an additional assessment based on specialization of needed area to be restored to maintain the main ecosystem services, especially water, soil productivity, and biodiversity, and has come up with watershed prioritization based on Madagascar I-400 commitment, which can be scaled down for action, planification, and prioritization. Just to give you some points to take at home. The first one is the integration of private sector is crucial, but might have some limitation in terms of maintaining ecosystem services in the territorial planning is not clear defining the potential chain value development priority. However, the upscaling process can only be done with the key contribution of private sector. Secondly, in terms of methodology, implementing a monitoring tool is central and must be based on ecosystem services impacts. And last, the sustainable landscape management is based on the needs and balance of ecosystem services priorities. It means that forest landscape restoration options must be identified only after considering the main ecosystem services to be restored. We have already tested this methodology, and I can tell you that it is just using the geographical information system and to analyze a lot of data, and you can use considering first those ecosystem services, and only after that you try to define which options can match with these ecosystem services. Do not forget that human life on this Earth planet depends first on the quality of these ecosystem services. That's why we need to begin our approach by these ecosystem services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noel, for your talk. Now, we've looked at maintaining ecosystem services values. We also want to dive into landscape restoration models. And this is going to be done by a very beautiful woman and vibrant woman who is doing great and awesome works. And then she is going to talk to us about the landscape restoration models. And her name, hold on guys. Her name is Milagri Nuvunga. Please help me welcome Milagri.
Thank you. I'm going to touch on a subject that has been well hammered during the last 2 days here in this global forum, and it is back to gender. I don't want to miss this opportunity to add my voice and stress the importance of me moving beyond these conversations. Like the previous speaker, we also are involved in a Rome study in Mozambique. And it is an experience that, or it is a story about something that happened during that exercise that I'd like to share here with you. Let me start with a quote from a woman we work with. "I totally agree with you. Restoration is a very good thing. But why should I be involved in a long-term, time-consuming process that will only benefit my husband and his family? When he dies or he divorces me, his family will take this land away from me." Louisa's comment came during a conversation that she was having with a colleague of mine about landscape restoration. Make no mistake, this was not born out of a lack of knowledge about the benefits of restoration. She knew very well that such a process could bring back much needed environmental services for her family and for her community, could help diversify local development opportunities, could enhance her family as well as communities' well-being. In light of discussions we have been having here, this may well sound like something that you have heard too often or written about 1,000 times, because it's well embedded in the fabric of communities across African countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, a situation that's shared by women in rural and urban areas, one that should therefore be part of our daily lives because it's part of our norms, it's part of our traditions. But it is about time that it stopped. This is an infringement of women's rights. As citizens, it is a violation of their human rights. Nothing illustrated to me the seriousness of this situation better than a lady's heartfelt testimony yesterday in this forum, when she shared a story of a woman who had planted trees with her husband in what she considered to be her family land, only to be refused the right to sell some of that timber when her husband died, so she could get much-needed medicine for herself. As a result, she died. And as that same participant said, how many of us have to die before this issue is resolved once and for all? In Mikaya, the organization I co-founded and it's working in Mozambique, it's based in Mozambique, we are always searching for innovative and sustainable strategies for local development, and undertaking this Rome study in the Chimanimani National Reserve, which is a transfrontier conservation area straddling Mozambique and Zimbabwe, and also a hotspot, an African biodiversity hotspot in the Eastern Afro-Montane region. This study enabled us to engage a variety of actors in an exercise that we believe could change this unique area into one of the most biodiverse and productive landscapes in Mozambique. We could only see benefits for everyone living and investing within this landscape and beyond. We had always known that working in the Chimanimani, we were working in a patriarchal society, and although we were aware of the challenges faced by women in these communities, we found ways to involve them in a variety of ways and include them even as shareholders in key businesses in that particular area. But even so, we were not very well prepared for the depth of feeling and resolve behind Louisa's statements as she expressed her unwillingness to embrace the restoration process. But in a landscape where subsistence, small-scale agriculture is the main land use. Women constitute the majority of small-scale farmers. Shifting cultivation is a dominant agriculture system. Shifting cultivation is also known to be the single most important driver of deforestation and degradation in this particular area. So in a landscape like this, there should be no successful restoration effort without women's full participation and engagement. As you can imagine, Louise's argument, which was of course shared by other women in this community, forced us to stop and consider how deep we should go to bring this issue to the fore and give it center stage in our study and later as partners in the implementation process, how we could put in place structure that could help us change the status quo. We were designing models taking into account ecological processes as well as the national legal context. But we had to stop and think about the implications of our argument into how we could address this important barrier to land restoration: women's inability to own land, trees, and forests within their local cultural context. With our partners, in this case, Brazilian entities and universities, we expanded our field work to give ourselves much more time to talk to the women alone, to understand better how they saw the issues, but also talk to them within the context of community engagement, so that we could ensure their buy-in and participation in landscape restoration and bring about adequate models for the work. The question I have here now, given that I've heard and many of you here sharing different models for landscape restoration, I would like to pose this challenge to all of us. How can restoration methodologies be enhanced to become an important force for the design and adoption of strategies that could enable women to gain voice and secure rights? Perhaps there are good models out there. If we do not do this, if we do not include women's rights at the center of this work, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, I think it will be a missed opportunity. Let's recognize that this ambitious agenda goes beyond the realm of biological sciences. Let's bring on board the right combination of expertise and institutions at the local, national, and international levels so that we can bring about the change we seek. Otherwise, if we don't do this, why should women care?
Thank you very much, Meo. This man has been involved in action research on strengthening collective action among community associations to undertake innovative practices that promote integrated natural resource management and livelihoods. And he's here going to talk to us about the missing link in our landscape restoration. Please help him welcome Douglas.
You all agree, and research has shown this, that forests and water are linked. Forest health has an effect on water quality and quantity. But the question is, if forests and water are linked, is the governance of these resources also linked at the local level? And if not, then what needs to be done to ensure that this joint coordination and enhance the governance of these resources? Working with our partners, we went out to find answers to these questions. Specifically, we wanted to understand how do communities perceive the linkage between forests and water? And how do they perceive the effect of this linkage, if it's there, on the resource condition? Working with our partners, we focused our analysis in two important ecosystems. One is the Mau Forest Complex, which is in Kenya. The second one is the Mount Elgon Forest Complex at the border of Kenya and Uganda. These are important ecosystems that really provide livelihood to communities in these areas. We talked to members of community forest associations and water user associations. What did we find out? From our analysis, we wanted to understand if they work together and they see the linkage. What did our analysis reveal? I just want to share with you two examples. The first one is communities along River Sosio. This is in Kenya. What did they see as the effect of changes in the forest on water? The second example, this River Matara. The communities here, similar to what the ones in Sosio area told us, there was change in the forest, there was cutting down of trees upstream. This affected the river downstream. That's why that river is dirty. And it not only reduced the flow of water, but they also said it contributed to erosion. What do these perspectives indicate? Well, communities understand that a change in the forest affects water quality. So they are aware. Awareness is not an issue. Then, what was the issue then? We found a huge gap in the governance of these two resources. There was no joint activities that the members of forest associations were undertaking together with the members of water user associations. The governance was separate. So what did we do to ensure that there's coordination between these two associations and their members, such that they do some joint activities? We used forest and water management plans. To our luck, we had 4 forest plans and 4 water plans. Together with our partners, we facilitated a process that brought together communities of these two associations into a joint planning meeting where they could suggest activities that they could implement together. This means, as was the case before, initially, the forest plans were only developed by members of forest associations. Similarly, the water plans were developed with members of water user associations. Our innovation was to facilitate a process that brought together both the forest associations and the water associations to develop strategies and activities that would be implemented together. Did you achieve any success? Or what was the achievement then? Communities managed to set restoration targets. They also set activities that could be implemented jointly. Activities for managing forests were included in water management plans. Similarly, activities for managing water were included in the forest management plans. So both activities could be implemented together. These are some of the common activities that the members started doing. There are restoration targets, and about 15,000 trees was an initial step that they planted in the initial stages. Also, through this process, we have improved it by enhancing participation of women in the process, both women and men. So that's one of our innovations, and ensuring that these associations come together and they set joint activities. What do we want to share with you? What is the take-home message from my talk? It's the missing link, as the title of my talk says. As you think about landscape restoration, what should you think about? The need to see resources as linked rather than as separate. Need for coordination. Be proactive. Foster collaboration between and among stakeholders from different sectors. And as my talk has shown, it's not always that difficult to bring people together. And by doing that, we enhance the governance of resources as linked rather than as separate. Thank you.
So there is the need of integrating water management and forest management. Thank you very much, Douglas. Our last speaker is by name Anthony Ochieng, and he is from Kenya. And he's a very inspiring young man who has taken up his passion and using that to connect with nature. He's here to share with us his story. Help me welcome Anthony.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. You guys look like lunch was served well. My name is Anthony, as Sarah actually said. I'm from Kenya. And I use photography to actually talk about landscape restoration. As you all know, all of us are actually on social media. All of us have smartphones. I'm pretty sure today most of you took a lot of pictures, right? And shared all over the world to actually say that you are the GLF. So what I do with photography is I use photography to actually change behavior towards the environment and landscape across Kenya. And I use pictures to actually tell the story about what's actually happening. So as from the first picture, those are kids who actually were being taught about invertebrates. And we were taking pictures of invertebrates and actually showing them the interaction between invertebrates and the whole ecosystem. And in the process, we actually take them to the nearby forest, which was Marsabit forest, which actually found northern part of Kenya. So they can be able to appreciate that there's the link between those particular invertebrates and the conservation of that particular forest. So how did I end up doing photography, or ending up doing photography? I went to a high school whereby the motto was to paddle to success. So that is me actually in one of the boats next to an island called Rusinga Island, where I come from. And this pushed me to actually be able to actually push forward and use photography as a tool to link science and the public. So before I was working in different landscapes, I worked in Laikipia landscape and also the Eastern Afro Mountain hotspot, where I saw quite a number of information coming out. But I felt we are really giving much attention to implementing more projects, but the common public does not really understand how to actually engage with conservationists, people implementing different projects. They feel like we're in a different space. And that is when I decided I wanted to link that particular group of people who are not really within the landscape restoration platform. And this was actually using photography. So that is when Tony Wild came to place, a platform whereby you share stories that enable knowledge sharing of everything, nature and wildlife. And through this, we have programs that is visual ecological literacy program, where we go to specific schools and the communities and document what they have. And in the process of documenting those particular pictures, we show them that particular picture. And the particular person we interact with gets an easy understanding on how important that particular environment is. They may not be occupying a different environment, but when you show them what the environment is worth, they're able to actually appreciate the particular landscape. So we go to the extent of even working with scientists, especially scientists who are working on restoration and also wildlife conservation issues. We document their work, and in the process do exhibitions within the particular area they're working, and be able to link their results with the public. Because most of us do very beautiful papers, but they end up either on shelves or in journals. But with photography, or if you engage conservation photography in the process of doing your research, you're able to document the best part of the research and the worst part of the research, and be able to actually share it with the larger public. As you've noticed, most of my presenters here were using pictures on their presentations. So how best can actually use that to actually advocate for more landscape restoration across the globe? So in the process of doing this, since it was something I really wanted to do, and I had to figure out ways of actually making it more of an enterprise rather than just a social change dimension, I went ahead to actually work with other organizations to actually be able to document their work. And in the process of documenting their work, I will give them an environmental aspect, in the sense that I'll offer environmental awareness in the areas they work with. So for instance, this is an event that happened this year at Olpajeta Conservancy. It's an event that happens annually, that cricket is played to save the last rhino. And I was contracted to actually work for this, to document this particular event. But in the process of documenting this particular event, they're able to support me to actually take at least 100 students with me into the particular event and teach them about conservation issues and landscape restoration during that particular event. So for me, it's a give and take. I use my skills, and in the process, I'm able to actually share to a wider mass of people about landscape restoration. We are 1 year. We started in last year, 2017, September. And so far, we've been able to actually reach about 100 students. We've been able to hold the first ever festival for bird and wildlife photo festival in East Africa. And that has actually brought many people who are using creative or innovation to actually think about how best we can actually innovate our passions, actually build them up and to be able to influence change. I'm sure this doesn't really feel like it has fallen into what has been happening around, because my previous speaker talked about data. And if we are not able to document, package that data depending on the particular audience well, we won't be able to be passing the right information. So this is just about creating awareness, but the most important part is linking science to the public. And when I talk about the public, I'm talking about the public, I mean people who are not necessarily within the landscape restoration fields or have no link in any way in working with the land restoration, because it gives them a chance to understand what we actually do, and we can actually use them as an avenue of sourcing for funds. And you can actually join me in this particular effort. How? If you're a conservation organization here, we can actually come in and help you document your results of landscape restoration, put them there in the public using photography, and in that particular process, we're able to actually create awareness, not only just in the area you work, but also globally. And then lastly, but not the least, a landscape that we all need to support restoration of a landscape through innovative mitigation. And it all starts with you as an individual. So with the word mitigation, if you look at the Kiswahili word for miti, M-I-T-I, it starts with mitigation. So the bold word is mitigation. So we all have to have innovative mitigations to support landscape restoration. Thank you.
Wow, those are beautiful pictures. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. Please, may you help me give our speakers a huge round of applause for their time and for accepting to talk to us. Okay, so we are moving on to the next and last session, which is questions and answers. So you have the opportunity to ask the speakers here any question that you need answers to. And this is going to be moderated by my colleague by name Zizi. Help me welcome her up on stage.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much to our speakers once again. For this session, we'll be opening the floor for questions to our speakers. We'll please try not to preamble too much when you are asking your question. Also, please say your name and the organization that you are coming from and who your question is directed to. So we'll take the first round of questions. Does anybody have a question? Yes, ma'am. There's a mic on your...
That. My name is Polly. My question is directed to Douglas. I'm representing Manor House Agricultural Center. We teach small-scale organic farming, also our Community Forest Association, and also Machinjoni Water Resource Users Association. My question really has to do about the data that is available to help us as people who can use science to inform our decisions about how we prioritize the planting of which trees along our rivers, how we ask for the help for the work that we need to do to save our rivers and also rejuvenate our forests that are mostly fuel wood at this point and want to be changed over to indigenous forest. It's a complicated question, but how do we use the data? What do we need to do to be able to be involved in that data collection and data use?
Douglas, would you like to answer that?
It's a difficult question, but I'll try to answer it. So in terms of data available, just for clarification, do you mean that the data that we have already?
There's data that you have already, and there's data also that we could help you collect if you tell us what the data is that you need in terms of water levels, et cetera. Yeah. And forest species, for instance, that are there.
Yeah, in terms of data that is available, we've been working, for instance, in Mau Forest Complex, as I mentioned, and Mount Elgon Forest.
Yeah, we're at Mount Elgon, Kitale, Mount Elgon Forest.
Yeah. So for our project, we've been mainly focusing on both qualitative data on governance, where we talk with community members, and we use what they themselves see as species. For instance, in terms of restoration, they are the ones who give what their priorities are. Then in Mau Forest, we've been working with our partners at the Water Resources Authority in involving communities to collect water quality and quantity data. So that one is available. Maybe we can follow up with that, and then we can see how we can push that forward. So for Mau Forest, we have data. For Mount Elgon, we're still collecting, and we'll proceed.
Thank you, Douglas. Do we have another question? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm Gordon Ajonina from Cameroon, Wildlife Conservation Society. I'm also a consultant. I'm highly interested in the presentation made by the first speaker on the bottlenecks and challenges of data sharing and the role of observatory. As being involved in setting up several observatories, in fact, I want to learn from her or from you how it is set up and run here, especially structural and functional aspects. What do I mean by that? The legal status for observatory, we know, is it an NGO? Is it lodged within the government setup? Is it within the private sector, the interface? And then secondly, the functional aspects. I see really that there is the virtual aspects of it, which I see the website and all that. And physically, I don't know how members contribute. It is almost related to the previous question that the previous speaker asked. Physically, how do they form up, I don't know, what platform exists for this data to be physically, to be taken from those who had it so that people within the network or observatory can push it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. In terms of, you mentioned, I also have a question for you. I think I'll ask that later. But in terms of the setup and structure of the observatory, I think it's very important to start by saying that this was a pilot project and it was implemented by 3 institutions. That's the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development in Kenya. It was then there was CIFOR, the Center for International Forest Research, and CIRAD, the French Agricultural Research Center. And at this point, how the data was uploaded was we went around the countries, the forest institutions in the 4 countries, and they gave us the data that they wanted to share, and we put it up in the observatory. But what we're looking at in the future is having a feature where once we implement it, like fully implement it, we're going to have a feature where every focal point in every country can actually sign up to the website, to the platform, and put their data there and verify the data that's already there. And in terms of how it's being run, the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development is one which worked on that observatory, the technical part, they're the ones who worked on that, and they're the ones who are maintaining the site. Then I think that's pretty much it. So in terms of, you asked about whether it's government, it's NGO. So this is something from the beginning we involved, before we even began working on the structure of the observatory and the technical aspects and other aspects, we involved the stakeholders in the forest sector and specifically the forest institutions. So this is something they know about. We've had several outreach activities and events where we went around the countries, we took to them. It was, I think generally what I would say, it was a participatory approach. And what we're looking at in the future is now them being willing, them contributing the data, and there's a keen interest in the data because the Regional Center, which is an intergovernmental organization, had their governing council meeting, which is composed of the permanent secretaries from all the member states, which are 20 in Africa, and they expressed interest, and Rwanda and Botswana came forward, the permanent secretaries came forward, and they said they're interested in that. So there is that interest. So we're really looking forward to the next steps with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Do we have any more questions? Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for the chance. Mine is not a question, but it is an observation, because since yesterday, the presenters have been presenting good reports, and according to me, all the African countries have almost the same challenge when it comes to land tenure. And also, my observation is, I think we don't, political goodwill is not on our side. Because when we talk of landscape conservation, scientists, we have all the facts on our fingertips, whereby if we can work as a team and reduce the blame game, because you can see we are blaming each other, yet the answer is within us. African countries, or maybe I can take an example of Kenya, where we normally have a blame game on conservation. Water cannot be there without a forest. We have CFS, as Douglas said, and we have RUAs. We have policies, we have acts, no implementation. Communities are willing to work, but without implementation of the policies and the acts, then it becomes a constraint to us as communities. I represent communities. Another observation which I've seen is that if our politicians in Kenya, I mean Kenya, cannot pass the women bill to assist the women, women will not rise up. If also men cannot allow women to be given chance, that is why I was saying the answer is within us. And if we want to go far, let us move together. We join hands, we move together. Because if you are denying a woman chance to arise, and we are all bearing ladies, men are bearing ladies, and they are their daughters, they are their wives. So why do we rotate? And the answer is within us. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was a very great comment, and I really think that it's one that really needs to be engaged. Is there anyone who would like to quickly just grapple with that comment? Do you want to engage the comment, or do you want to ask a question?
I'm going to talk in French in order to express, and Mama Cécile is going to help me for the translation. My English is not fluent. Donc, je voudrais parler de la photographie et du frère kenyan qui a parlé de la forêt et de l'eau. L'Afrique, nous sommes un tout, nous sommes un. Et comment nous allons résoudre le problème de la restauration des paysages avec l'eau dans les pays d'Israël? Parce que je viens de la République démocratique du Congo, je suis une femme autochtone. Maintenant, le problème se pose en ce qui concerne le transfert des eaux de l'Ubangi vers les pays d'Israël pour les aider avec de l'eau. Nous devons trouver le consensus là-dedans. Comment nous allons restaurer les paysages avec le problème de l'eau? Aussi, je voudrais m'adresser à ma sœur de Mozambique sur la problématique qui concerne la terre et le patriarcat. Nous sommes maintenant, dans mon organisation, dans la coalition des femmes leaders pour l'environnement et le développement durable, sur ces points-là, avec le dialogue multi-acteurs. Ce dialogue-là, c'est pour réunir d'abord deux femmes, la femme autochtone pygmée et la femme bantou, nilotique et soudanaise, pour réclamer maintenant les droits à la terre. Et là où il y a le patriarcat, la femme n'a pas droit à la terre. C'est le frère qui l'hérite. Et quand mon mari meurt, on pratique le sorora. Je dois épouser le petit frère de mon mari. Quand bien même il a le sida ou bien une autre maladie vénérienne, c'est là où se pose le problème. Nous avons, avec notre expérience, nous avons fait des dialogues avec les autorités traditionnelles, les autorités claniques, les parlements provinciaux, et nous avons trouvé des issues avec des édits, des lois qui sont sectorielles au niveau local pour résoudre ces problèmes-là. Voilà au moins ma préoccupation. Maman Cécile va traduire.
Thank you. Mama Dorothée is an IP woman coming from DRC, but she speaks English. She doesn't want to do it sometimes, but she speaks good English. So she has two questions. One for the photography, the speaker who presented something on the photography. She would like to know how to deal with restoration using photography and linking rivers and waters, because she's saying that in the DRC, they will be providing water to neighboring countries. How can that be done? How can that be taken into account within a restoration program using the photography? That was the first. The second question was to Milagri from Mozambique, and she was sharing the struggle of women in the patriarchal system, where they don't inherit and they don't own land, neither forests. And she was asking, how can you help? Because in the DRC, they started, if her husband passes away, she will be obliged to get married to the husband's brother, even if he is infected by AIDS or other malaria or other diseases, sexual transmissible diseases. So for her, they started undertaking some dialogue at the local level with local elected people like parliamentarians at the provincial level. But she's wondering if there are other initiatives from Mozambique that where she can learn from. I hope that's where you are prepared.
Very good translation.
Thank you.
Anthony, would you like to take your question first?
So using photography to actually talk about water or forest restoration, it depends, but first and foremost, I'll just say that photography is not limited to still alone. We can actually do motion, that is video. So when you're building up restoration awareness creation, you can actually take sentiments of a given community and share them around and tell them if they really want to actually continue to restore that particular water catchment area. So, but first thing and foremost is that you have to be able to identify what exactly do you want to actually address when you're actually doing the landscape photography or landscape restoration photography. You have to identify what is the issue at hand here, who is my target group. And then after identifying that particular target group, now you can be able to communicate with them, because you are trying to use photography as a tool to link what us most scientists have and the common public. So that's it.
Milagri?
Okay. I think the two were more comments, and they were sharing about issues that they feel in their own constituencies, and some work is being done already, for instance, in this case in Congo, which is something that we are also doing in Mozambique, in engaging leaders. And again, I think yesterday we had the opportunity to engage with a traditional, I think, chief who was in one of the sessions and did share about actually what he felt was his role and the role of other chiefs or traditional leaders in changing the behavior of men and therefore the traditional societies within which we live. And that's what was shared from Congo also is exactly what we're doing, where we are working with traditional leaders, with women to understand, and then with traditional leaders, because this is an issue that we think it's not just about women, it is affecting all the efforts that we are talking about today for restoration, because we are trying to address climate change, and there is no way we can do that if more than half of the humanity cannot really, does not feel empowered to participate in this effort. And so I think we should, in a way, use platforms such as this to share our experiences and also connect, have stronger networks that will actually not only showcase the problem, but also showcase solutions that in some countries are being achieved and being tested and also becoming very successful. So I think it's something that we as workers in this restoration process, we have to also embrace as ours for the success of restoration in other aspects linked to climate change.
Thank you very much, Milagre. I cannot agree with you enough that as much as we can have conversations about climate change, degrading landscapes, we have to take every context, we have to take in every context. And really the gender question is not something that can be left out because it sets how most of us live. It sets the laws, it sets all kind of things. So I really think that the work that you're doing in Congo, the work that you're doing also in Mozambique is very remarkable. Thank you so much for that. Please give Milagre a hand of applause. We still have a little bit of time for some questions. Question right at the back there, please.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Lee Winowicki, and I'm from the World Agroforestry Center here in Nairobi. And my question was for the photographer. So I fully agree with the power of photos, and I was wondering what kind of out-of-the-box suggestions you have for, or tools you use to showcase your photography. I visited your website. I was just wondering what other kind of social media tools or smartphone apps or something you've engaged with to really give power to your photographs and to engage and encourage people to continue conserving.
Anthony?
Cool. Thank you very much for your question. I'm still trying as much as possible to use the social media platform, because social media platform is one powerful tool. But one of the things that we are planning to do is actually have photo exhibitions within the particular areas that we work in. For example, if it's for agroforestry, we can actually document the women planting tree seedlings, the process that particular process from when the project is started until the end. And then after the end of the project, we can actually use photo exhibition to showcase what the community has been doing so far, and they'll be able to appreciate that particular effort. It's not just about doing and planting trees, it's about showing the community that we've actually made a step from where we were and where we are today. So for instance, if you are doing agroforestry and you go to a particular piece of plot and you take up that particular picture and have it in your database, 1 year later you keep doing pictures. Now you can actually use that as a comparison. It's more of an evidence-based approach in showing results. And that is one way you can actually look at, because you can use that particular image to show the community, show your donors, show your partners in the process, and they're going to appreciate the effort that you're actually putting by just using 2-3 images or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Do you have another question? Yes, please.
Jérôme Bossuet from CIMMYT Kenya. Just to continue on that, do you also ask community to take pictures, like photo voice approach?
So I'm only 1 year old. Previously I was working for BirdLife International and then left to actually be able to pursue this. So those are other avenues of actually looking at it. But what's in mind is actually work with students to actually teach them conservation photography at an earlier age. So they might not necessarily end up in landscape restoration. But in that particular process, they'll be able now to actually appreciate how important how important conservation is through using a tool of photography in the process. So still thinking about how you can use photography, but there are other forums around here that are using photography, like there's Digit. So Digit is one of the projects that happens in Masai Mara, in Amboseli ecosystem, where farmers can actually, they dig half-moon shaped crescents. And then in the process, they take that particular picture in the app and share it to somebody else who can actually fund the farmer directly, or the person actually restoring that particular land. So yes, it's possible. It just depends with which particular project or concept you have in mind to actually put that photography in practice. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Do we have another question? Yes, sir, at the back.
My name is Kimani Kibe, and I just wanted to add on to what the lady in yellow said. I think we've had so many of these forums, we've had so many of these research findings and so on and so forth. I think we have done so much talking as players involved in this field. I think it's time all the organizations and stakeholders are united and started speaking with one voice so that we can actually start doing the work that we're supposed to be doing. Secondly, I think we need to be more assertive, especially when you're dealing with governments. For example, currently the government of Kenya wants to establish a coal plant along the coast of Kenya. And we also know that they did a railway project through one of the smallest parks in Kenya. I think these are some of the things as various agencies, as various organizations, we should be uniting against and speaking with one voice. So I would encourage most of you to unite and get to the ground and start working instead of talking. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And I think your comment specifically speaks to this session of talks that we have. So basically, we titled it to be as being the way forward for comments exactly like that, because now we have had workshops, we have had the first day. This is the end of the second day, and we are looking for the way forward. And the way forward is action. It's to move forward, it's to do things, it's to get out of offices and to implement things. So I really, really, really agree with your comment. Thank you very much for that. Do we have other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mine is also a comment. I'm Joseph Itimana from University of Kabianga. I want to appreciate and encourage the photographer communicating through photography and videos and the documentaries. I think this is a very strong way of enhancing conservation, and how I wish he gets strength and resources to be able to document degraded ecosystems, the parts of degraded ecosystems, so that people may be brought to be aware that they need to do something. And organizations and government departments can really embrace that. And in teaching institutions like universities, such tools also could help us. We wish him the best, and we encourage him to visit maybe institutions and share with the youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you very much. I'm humbled with that, but just to add on is that one of the things that I came out, because I'm part of the Youth in Landscape Leadership Forum, is that I'll be doing restoration cafes in various universities just from here, because this is my full-time job. My full-time job is to actually help people change their behavior, change their negative behavior towards the environment. That is my full-time job. I've decided to dedicate my life to actually be able to try as much as possible and tell the general public that the environment is us. We depend on it. There is no other way we can separate the environment from us. And that particular landscape, when it's broken down, we are broken. So using photography is just one means of reaching out to a large masses of people. And I'll definitely feel free to come to University of Kabianga and actually launch the Restoration Cafe for university students. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions, but I would like to ask some of our speakers, just in 1 minute, tell us the way forward. What does the way forward mean to you? What is the way forward in your specific line? Milagre.
I'll just give one example of a way forward. It was shared with me last night. Two ladies, one sharing experience in Sierra Leone, another one here in Kenya, who are working with their husbands to convince their families, and they are succeeding in this, in sharing their huge family estate in ways that will enable their sisters and aunties to also have title deeds. Action has begun. It's not impossible. There are many men that are joining the voices of women, and it's happening. So it begins at home, and it's happening right here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is an amazing way forward. Julian, in just 1 minute, what is the way forward?
Thank you. I want to repeat again that if really we want to think about landscape management, don't forget to think about the ecosystem functions to be more effective and efficient in terms of protecting human life in our planet. So we will try to work on this ROAM plus to begin with ecosystem functions and to work with the option of AFRA that we can use to maintain these functions well as possible.
Thank you very much, Julian. Milagre can tell us what she thinks the way forward, so can Julian, but it really is up to each and every single one of us to formulate a way forward and to implement it. So with that being said, we have come to the end of our session. We are going to have a short break after this, and then there is a plenary for everyone at 6, right? Oh, okay, 5:45. Oh, yeah. Sorry. So at 5:45, there's going to be a policy plenary. It's also going to be live streamed. Thank you so much for joining our talks. Thank you so much for everyone who was online live with us, who was watching. Thank you so much. And this is the end of our session. Please give another warm round of applause to our speakers.
And give another warm round of applause to our moderators. They're representing youth. They're not professional moderators. They're just like you and I, and they've done a great job.